Well, what an episode of Smackdown tonight. Major angles at the beginning and the end, or major segments at the beginning and end, with a big angle in the middle. And we have, as my co-host, to discuss this big episode of Smackdown, which is getting tons of praise in the comments area, Travis Bryant, longtime host of PW Torch Podcast, PW Torch East Coast Cast, making his debut here on the new PW Torch YouTube live stream. Travis, welcome.
Hey, Wade. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. It's good to be back on this show, new format, but I'm glad to be here.
I love being able to see you while we talk here. It's been a fun ride this last month. Bobby Heenan in the background, awesome. I love it. So we're starting just a few minutes late. Travis, right as we're about to go live, his internet crashed. He froze on the screen. And so, but I started solo, and then he showed up right as I decided to start anyway. And so it's great to have him on. Travis, so we have, I assume everybody watching saw the show or read the recap at pwtorch.com or kept up on social media, but big segment at the beginning with CM Punk and Paul Heyman, a big angle with Drew McIntyre later, Drew laying out CM Punk and bloodying him in the parking lot, and then carrying him into the arena, dropping him out of the stage, mocking him, taking something off his wrist, leaving the building. And then he says, according to Kayla Braxton, I believe, reported that when he left, he said, "I'll see you on Monday." And then she reported that Punk would be in the hospital overnight for observation. And she doesn't know if this will delay his being medically cleared, depending on what Drew did to him. So big angle there. And then we have, yes, they said the word hospital. And then the local hospital is going to get so many calls, and they're going to be mad that WWE didn't say local medical facility to throw people off. And then Jacob Fatu debuts, a standout wrestler for the last 5 years in MLW. A lot of people thought he was WWE ready. There were some issues that made people think maybe not. Maybe they wouldn't bring him in, but he is a really good addition to this new bloodline. And I think it does explain, Travis, why the bloodline, the Tongans and Solo, have been backing away and retreating from baby faces when either the numbers are even, or even tonight they had the numbers advantage, but they didn't have baseball bats. And you're kind of going, well, they talk a big game. Paul Heyman says, Roman didn't want these guys. They're too unpredictable, too scary, too violent. But they've always been backing away and retreating. Jacob Fatu adds an element now to that group that I think tips them into the zone of the hype for them. I'm going to throw to you. You can choose either of those two subjects to talk about. We'll, of course, cover both. But what do you think stood out to you more? What do you have more to say about between those two major angles?
I thought the opening segment was really well done, as well as the follow-up later on in the show with Drew beating up off-screen, bloodying Punk. They've done a good job with with these off-screen beatings. Owens a month or two back had there's no meat and gash in the head, but they do a good job with whatever they're doing with the blood gimmicks to make it seem like, it looks like a wound. Could just be a bunch of blood. It was really well done. Taking his friendship bracelet from.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what that was. Travis's internet froze again. He's going to work on that. The reviews for the show, by the way, as we wait for hopefully Travis to get his signal back or reset it again as he did. The comment room is raving about this show. Brock Benningfield says, what a great week of wrestling shows. Dustin Heyer says that was an all-time great show in my opinion. Brendan says that was an epic debut. Mike Good too says both shows definitely picked up this week. Just great stuff. Travis, you're I heard you a little bit, but it looks like you definitely still have a weak internet signal. And Dean Hacker says Chicago is CM Punk. Travis, you're back. So go ahead and pick up on your Punk Drew comments. I can hear you and see you, Travis. You're a little.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm getting the signal that it's on, it's off.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening. No one else in the house is having this issue, and all of a sudden,
maybe
it's me.
I know it's weird, but maybe turn off the TV. That could be eating up some streaming. I mean, if your signal's weak, that might be enough to pull up.
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, because that's definitely on the same network.
Yeah, maybe that'll. I mean,
for
it can't hurt.
Can't hurt. Now I don't have a cool little.
You have a boring background. What's going on? Jeez.
Yeah, it was like TV hanging thing with the TV not even on it. But anyway, I'd like the Jacob Fatu debut. I'd like him to be less snarly, but I think that's exactly the point. Even Tama Tonga was like kind of creeping up behind him, like, is it safe to be in the same ring with this guy? So I thought that was a bit of a nice touch, that the unpredictable or whatever, the infamous and the I forgot what they call Tama, but he's weary. So yes, it seems like he's going to be the guy that they just throw at everything, and that's their new weapon. I think all of this, including the two Tongans, which I don't know, is kind of confusing as far as nationalities and all that kind of stuff goes. But whatever. I think it's a lot of it is it's a lot in a short amount of time, and I wish one or both of those guys were introduced earlier. I don't know when and where. How do you insert them? It's WrestleMania season. I know you don't want to mess with a good thing in a formula, story you got laid out. But they all seem so new, and I don't know anything much about any of them. And my whole catch up, I was 2 months behind and had to catch up in the last couple of days. I like them in the ring, especially Tama.
Yeah,
but I just don't know. I mean, they're bad guys, and they do what they're told.
But I think that's interesting from your perspective, because the vast majority of people watching SmackDown tonight are exactly where you are. Somebody who watches mostly the main brands. Really, mostly in your case, WWE, and you fell behind. You've been moving and doing a lot of other stuff, and I've been waiting to have you on a show again when you caught up, and you did. And so you've crashed course in the presentation of the Tongans. And just the new bloodline tonight that we've seen form, and there might be more added. But so your perspective matches easily the vast majority of people watching SmackDown tonight. So do you think at this stage, what you've seen in catching up on this Bloodline 2.0 storyline, or whatever we're going to call it, and tonight's developments, that and Solo Sikoa's acting and Paul Heyman's reactions to Solo, is this a legit sequel to the original Bloodline, or does it feel like a B version and they're just scrambling and scrapping, trying to put something together people will care about? Where are you on this?
I think it was a little bit of both until you started with the scrambling part. Like I don't get that it doesn't feel like it's slapdash. But the first part I did agree with, that how'd you phrase it? I think it is a legitimate sequel.
Yeah.
But I also think it is lesser. It, by definition, almost can't be anything but lesser, because Peak Bloodline, as a lot of people were, that's cinema. It was all the hyperbolic praise for it, which a lot of it was deserved. But you can't. The follow up to that is almost going to be, no matter how good it is, it's just, you would have to, it's like Terminator 2. It's like, they're really not going to do, like they tried like 3-4 times after that. Like you're not going to, like that's peak.
So this is not Godfather 2 for you yet.
No, we're not in. No, 2 was isn't that the better one? People say?
That's what I'm saying. So it's more Terminator sequel, not Godfather sequel. But
it's a good sequel so far. We're a few minutes into the sequel, to keep the analogy going. So it's really not fair to say how good it is or how bad it is, at least at this point. But I think it is fine. I think the things are going well. I don't feel like it's slapdash. I do think they're going to have to work on some personality stuff with the three. Yeah. Samoan again,
Tongans. So
those guys, because I don't know anything about it.
Right, and they haven't done a lot. they haven't done a lot to establish the Tonga and Loa, but in terms of their distinct person. I mean, if you watch carefully, you see differences, but they're not, sort of like the Usos. Nobody could tell the two apart forever until the Bloodline storyline, basically. But how about Solo Sikoa? How is Solo doing as the new leader, intimidating Heyman? He dropped that. You had two big moments in the Bloodline even before Jacob Fatu that would have been enough to lead the show with, which was Heyman telling Punk, "Take me with you." We'll get into the context of that, which is a great moment. And then we also had Solo telling Heyman, "I hate to be the one to tell you this, but I love you. Roman's not coming back." And Heyman's jaw dropped. Solo heads to the ring. Heyman goes, "How can that be?" Heyman then follows Solo to the ring. So we continue to have this lack of communication with Heyman, who was and Roman, other than Heyman telling us what Roman told him as he got on the private plane after WrestleMania, which is hands off Punk. He's too close to Heyman. That was one of the edicts, and he's breaking that edict. So the dynamic with Solo and Heyman, I want to get your opinion. I've been eager to talk to you about this because I know you were behind and now you're caught up. And we've done so many shows together. What do you think of how Solo is doing and Heyman's new demeanor reacting to him?
I think Solo's laying it on very thick. I think Heyman's laying it on even thicker. I'm inferring from your tone too thick. It's like it's more negative than positive. Yes,
it's a little over the top.
If they could bring it down a notch, it'd be great. Like Heyman plays it well. It's to me, it's just over the top. Solo, not as good a performer in that sense. Is just kind of, hands rubbing villain a bit, and it's just like with the gloves and everything's just so like. But it's okay. I think you're in a position that a lot of people are in, which is so far so good but not great. There's potential for this to grow grow as a faction, get their characters across. Yeah. Solo is no Roman Reigns. I don't think he ever will be. That's fine though. By the way, this weekend, a quick plug for our Wade Keller Pro Wrestling podcast feed, which is, if you're watching us on YouTube, we have podcast feeds. You can catch this show if you search Wade Keller on your podcast app, if you prefer that format some weeks. And then also when you search Wade Keller, you'll see a blue logo show up, which is the podcast rather than the post shows. And this weekend, we're running a 2.5 hour plus interview I did with Sean Waltman 10 years ago in 2 parts, Saturday and Sunday. It's dropping. And he talks about, he thinks he was one of the first people to tell Roman Reigns he's going to be a megastar, that he saw him very early on, that he had an aura to him and a presence to him. And we get into that. And Sean talks about his conversation with Roman about that. So I encourage people who are watching this show, search on your podcast app, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever, Wade Keller, blue and red logos pop up, subscribe to both. And on the blue logo show this weekend, we'll have this really fascinating interview, 2.5 hours with Sean Waltman. He's a lifelong friend of mine going back to our teenage years. And he really opened up about a lot of stuff. So I say that because one, it's great context for what's going on with Solo here. I don't think people looked at Solo and said, "Oh, future centerpiece top star in this business." He's been good, but this is a lot of pressure, Travis, on him to follow in Roman's footsteps, act opposite of Heyman. And Solo's shtick all along was less is more. The whole Bloodline 1.0 was you'd watch Solo, and he was really good with his subtleties, with his body language, facial expression. He'd play freeze tag while Jay and Jimmy were acting up and doing all this stuff. Yeah. Now they're asking a lot more of him. I don't expect him to be great right away, but he's good, and some weeks better than others. But I think it's good enough. I want him to grow into the role better, but there's time, and I'm sure he's still finding his footing. I'd like to say something. I don't know if I'm going to be one of the first people saying this, but I think we all assume the crowd indication Roman Reigns is going to come back as a babyface.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Roman Reigns is the biggest heel in pro wrestling right now because a phone call, an email, a text message, one form of simple communication would solve so much. He's your wise man. He's your friend. He's all those things. And you're letting him be tortured week after week by not talking to him, by letting him, because it seems like Solo's full of crap. Mm-hmm. Oh, I talked to Roman. No, he hasn't.
That's a great part. Yeah,
Roman's not coming back.
When he gets exposed.
Give me a break. Roman's not coming back. So Heyman just selling it. I was just like, wait, you're just not even going to question it at all, Paul? I hate to tell you, I love you, but like, what indication has Solo given you that he's being honest and forthright in any of the things that's going on? Did you know Jacob Fatu was going to show up tonight, Paul? Did you know any of the other two guys were going to show? Mm-hmm. No, you don't want him in the group and all those things. But you're just going to buy his thing. But again, it all comes back to Roman. Roman could solve it just like that. So I think that's going to need to be addressed in a big way before Roman even shows back up on TV. Maybe I'm the only one thinking about it.
No. I mean, Ryan Hutchinson in the chat room says Heyman is a broken man right now. JC Scooby says Roman Reigns is coming back as a heel still, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not ruling that out. It would take the wind out of the sails of the fans who've been chanting, we want Roman, to have Roman show up as a heel.
Did you see Solo the other day go, now you do? Now you do? That's interesting. He mouthed it. The mic wasn't on him, but he said it in one of the 800 shows I've watched in the last 2 days. I was like, oh, wow, yes. How about that? Stupid, fickle wrestling fans, but that's not sorry.
Lando Lay in the chat room says, could be that they beat Roman and left him for dead, so he's healing up in the story. I would love for them to have a storyline reason that Roman has iced Heyman, that he's ghosted him. And I mean, they've got to have something in mind. I mean, this is not going to be a shoddy story. That's too big of a plot point to not have an explanation. And it can't just be Roman going, I had to spend time with my family and I wasn't paying attention because I was so distraught from WrestleMania. I mean, I guess it could be, but to not return Heyman's texts, and all that. I mean, so I don't know what it is, but I mean, this is something that Heyman and Levesque and probably Roman too, by the way, in real life, IRL behind the scenes are really invested in and trying to make right. And I think one thing we'll talk about next, and I want to pause to introduce the show formally here in a moment before we get into it, is where does Punk fit in to this? This is really interesting having him. I know SmackDown's in Chicago, makes sense for him to be there as a follow-up to Drew and all that. But Heyman talking about Punk being his best friend, sitting next to his kids at the Hall of Fame ceremony. They have a history together. Saying tonight to Solo, Roman said, hands off. That is an edict. Hands off Punk. And you guys are breaking that because Roman respected my relationship with Punk. It just seems like there's going to be something where Punk and Roman and Solo and all of this comes to a head at some point too. Not between now and SummerSlam. This is a longer term story, but they are laying the groundwork that if Punk stays healthy, and that it seems like he's going to eventually end up in this in some form or fashion too over the next year. But pause your thought. I said more than I actually wanted to do because I do want to just formally introduce us, and then we'll get back to that, and we'll bring in our video callers. We're hoping to hear from Charlie Kate, who is the co-host of the Acknowledging WWE podcast, which is part of the PW Torch Daily Cast podcast lineup. We have multiple free podcast feeds that each serve different purposes. The PW Torch Daily Cast features a different show each day of the week with a different theme and different hosts. There's some great shows on there. If you are just discovering us on YouTube and you're not subscribing to our podcast lineup, please do. You're going to find some shows that are going to become weekly staples of your podcast listening. Just search PW Torch in your podcast app to subscribe to that. Charlie Kate attended tonight, and we're hoping to hear from him. He was iffy on whether he'd be able to get out of traffic and have the bandwidth with his schedule to do so. So we're hoping. But this is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Friday, June 21st, 2024. I am Wade Keller, host of the show, the editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter, predating the internet, documenting wrestling for over 35 years, and also the website pwtorch.com with news and commentary, live pay-per-view and PLE coverage, flashback articles. We just put up 10 years ago Smackdown article, which is fascinating. I always love putting those flashbacks up because I end up reading over those and reminding myself of things happening 10 years ago this week. We also put up a poll on pwtorch.com. I hope all of you will vote in, which is if you had been watching Dynamite and you have stopped, which is about half of all Dynamite viewers, based on this week's record low number. There's asterisks and excuses and reasons and qualifiers, but it's significant news. I put up a poll saying, why have you stopped watching Dynamite if you have? And we're getting fascinating responses. We put up, I don't know, about 8 options. So go vote in that if you used to be a Dynamite viewer and you've been watching it not at all or less. And so nevertheless, pwtorch.com, check it out every day. There's content you won't find anywhere else. We're not into chasing the SEO story of the day quite as much as we are trying to put up good, thoughtful articles and do live TV and pay-per-view coverage, but we cover the big news too. So it's a good accompaniment to wherever else you go for your wrestling news. But we are here tonight on YouTube to talk SmackDown. And as I said, my co-host is Travis Bryant of the long-running, and now, do we say it's on hiatus or just dead, the East Coast cast?
I wouldn't say it's dead. Shows can just be over and not be dead.
No, it's either on hiatus
or dead. What a dead show.
It's dead.
Jeez.
Is it ever?
No,
it's over. Well, could you? I mean, Punk said he's never going back to WWE, and look at him now. So
no,
I mean,
I didn't stop doing the show because I was like bitter and upset about life. It just things change and fandom changes really.
Yes.
Not even fandom. It's anyway. But maybe. I know Kylan sure wants it. I get a message from him every 3 weeks. Hey, it'd be real nice if you guys came.
Well, hopefully it's a reunion show one of these days. But anyway.
So you got Rich and Cam and Cam's not on the brand anymore so much. But but still, you got so many other folks.
Yeah. Well,
I appreciate being wanted and people wanting to hear me, but maybe.
All right. So anyway, good to have you here. You are still, I know people who are fans of East Coast Cast have been a semi-regular again on the post show here, and this is your first YouTube. I do want to let people know we want you to participate in the show. We have a chat room open if you're watching us live on YouTube. That's one way to participate. I encourage you to do so. Super chats are appreciated and welcomed. We've got those activated. You can also email us at wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. If you listen to us on our podcast feed on delay, on demand, or watch us on YouTube on demand, and you can't watch our show or listen to our show live after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, absolutely email us while you're watching the show. You can still be part of the show that way, even if you can't be part of the live chat. The other way to participate and get your thoughts in is as a video caller, and that is right now a VIP and Patreon supporter exclusive. And so you can look at pwtorchvip.com or on our Patreon page, although I forgot to put up the code today, so I apologize to our Patreon people. Email me if you're listening, and I'll email you back the code. But make that a VIP and Patreon supporter exclusive right now to be on the show with us. We don't want to be overwhelmed. And we did a 2.5 hour plus show on Wednesday. If everybody starts calling, things could get out of hand. But we're easing our way into this YouTube world, Travis, and it has been fun. But those are the ways to check us out. You also are invited, as always, to read my TV reports, and often we have a second report, like Alex McDonald, my co-host, last week, doing their report, an alt perspective report. So check that out on our website, pwtorch.com. All right, let's just get back into things here with that business out of the way, and let's bring our first caller onto the show. We'll get back to my Punk topic in a bit, Travis. Ken Arnold joins us by yes, Ken.
Hello,
Ken,
can you hear me?
Yeah, we sure can. Welcome, Ken.
All right, hope you don't mind me just doing audio only.
No, we 100% are okay with that. I understand it's not not always convenient or desirable for people to be on camera. Callers and audio callers. You are an audio caller. Welcome, Ken.
It's a good Friday night. Yeah, this was a good SmackDown. I mean, I mentioned in the YouTube comments this was kind of like the night of the heels, really. I mean, all heels. They swept all the matches and the beatdowns, and I mean, I thought it was overall a really good show. I mean, I kind of want to divert from the Bloodline for a second and talk about the Drew McIntyre CM Punk development tonight, which I thought was really, really good. I thought Drew, the violent beatdown on CM Punk off camera and then dragging him out to the stage was really well done. I mean, Drew clearly is finally snapped. He's finally just said, forget it. I'm just going to just beat him down. embarrass and humiliate him. So they pretty much called it even at that point, since Punk, kicked him in the crotch last weekend. So I thought the friendship bracelet thing was good. Stealing that, I thought Nick Aldis kind of pushing Drew back, and then Drew just really shoving him and getting him in his face to say, "Don't touch me again." I thought that was really well done.
Yep.
I kind of think, I don't know if I'm guessing they'll have their match at SummerSlam. I mean, they'll build up to that, but I feel like it's so heated and so intense that I feel like and this is just me just throwing this out there as an idea. I thought about this. They should do an angle where maybe Paul Levesque comes out. Well, he has to, because it's so out of control, because Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis, he's kind of involved, can't get these guys under control. And Paul Levesque comes out and says, there's a table and chairs, the usual deal in the ring. And he has a contract that says, you'll have your match, but zero tolerance. You cannot touch each other until that match. And if they touch each other, they do some sort of thing where one of them gets suspended or fired, like kayfabe it. And it just build up the intensity that when they finally get their hands on each other after like a month of not, physically touching each other, but just taunting each other, I think would be a great idea. It kind of reminded me of Steve Austin and Triple H from 2001, where they built that up. Like, don't touch, and just, so I'm kind of all over the place. I feel like that'd be pretty cool. A good idea.
Travis, yeah.
Travis,
talk about
classic. Yeah. Classic kind of deal with that. I think you'd have to. I think Punk has to get a physical one. Although you could say the nut shot and the costing is like, well, he paid for that with the beatdown. Now you don't touch. But I don't know. I think Punk needs to get him back physically. Like beat him up. Nothing as drastic as Drew did to him. Because then you're satisfied. Like, well, Punk got his revenge. But I think he needs to pop the guy one good in the face on TV, and then you get the no touching edict. Like, if he comes back in 3 weeks after he gets stretchered off, like, he shouldn't be back anytime, before, 3 weeks or so, I don't think. But whenever he comes back, they have Punk go after him. And then I think they could do the no touch deal. But I think you do that after a match is made. A match has to be made before you make that clause. And I think 3 weeks, again, if that's my timeline that I'm kind of arbitrarily using, Money in the Bank should be gone in the rear view at that point, or very close. So maybe you could then set that match up and it doesn't seem too far out.
Travis, this is a good opportunity, and Ken, I'll throw back to you in a second, to give your thoughts on whether Punk deserved it. Javier Machado emailed and said, Drew carrying Punk's bloodied carcass is my new wallpaper. Not for my phone, mind you, but for my house. I was chanting, you deserved it. You and I messaged this week as you've been catching up. And you were like, what's the big deal? Why are people Why are people thinking Punk went too far? Yes, Drew attacked Punk when his arm was already injured, and he's been saying mean things to him. But this does play in there's definitely two sides to this. I have been talking about both sides of it, but I think some people think there's only one side, which is Drew has it coming. He's a heel. He's been saying mean things to Punk, and of course that gives Punk carte blanche to go and interfere in world title matches and kick him in the nuts and cost him a chance to win the title. I am positing that a sizable part of the fan base, 10, 20, 30%, who were Punk fans, but not Punk fanatics, might be thinking Drew's been so freaking entertaining, and he's not wrong about Punk in a lot of ways. So I'm kind of thinking, why? I don't like Punk screwing up Drew's chance to win a title in Scotland. Just get healed up, wait your turn, and beat him. So Travis, I laid out that side, and I lean that way a little bit. But what's yours? Because I can tell through video, you are all wound up and ready to say this is ridiculous.
Like, welcome to pro wrestling? What? Like, does he... like, that's just the story that's being told. Punk's being a jerk by interfering and costing Drew. But I don't know how, as a good guy, how do you cost a guy in an honorable way? You can't.
So here, Travis, I'll say this.
Yeah, I don't care that he got screwed in his hometown in front of his folks. That
counter.
Shouldn't have been talking shit. Like, that's kind of the answer. You shouldn't have been talking shit all these months. Now look at you, Drew. But then Drew can snap and bloody the guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's like, yes, that's just what's. But it was me saying I don't get. People were complaining about specifically the AJ Cody finish and the Punk Drew thing, and I didn't get either one as I'm like watching the matches and post everything happening. I was just like, oh, this is just good, normal, typical stuff. What are people complaining about?
Yeah, no, fair enough. I think the counter argument when it comes to Punk is. Doesn't have to be a hard and fast rule, but baby faces, and I would argue, and I could tell you sort of like as I messaged you on Twitter X for like what, but I think baby faces should have some reverence
from the fans. That was
should have some. Yes, I did. There should be some reverence by baby faces for the sacredness, as Gunther might say in his crew, for world title matches. And
yes. He knows how sacred that is. That's why.
Running in the ring, being a fake referee, which was dumb because it would have made no difference. It would have been an official count. Drew didn't even know it was him. But that aside, the kick to the nuts, like hit him with your finisher instead of kicking him in the crotch. And ideally, I would have rebooked it to have Drew being about to cheat and Punk countering that, running out to ringside, taking something away from Drew that he was going to use. My on the VIP roundtable, I said, if Drew was about to cut off Priest's head with his sword, Punk could have run out and taken the sword away from him or something. Like, stop Drew from doing something underhanded, but he didn't. Yeah. He stopped Drew from trying to legitimately win.
Like Drew was just in a perfect position. He was doing everything right that you do. I don't even think he had done anything to Priest in a heelish way to get the advantage. It was just all like kind of clean stuff. Oh, the ref got bumped, and you could say, well, you were too aggressive, but that's just wrestling kind of norms. Yes, I agree, but I also think the impact is more because he was right there. He had it clean. Just even if the ref would have come to in a normal time frame, healed up and kind of like Drew still would have had the advantage if Punk, but also, shouldn't have been talking shit, Drew. And he was choking Punk. It's like, well, he didn't have much. That's kind of your only defense. A guy's got his hands around your throat.
So a couple points I'll add from our chat room here. Ryan Hutchinson said, I've been okay with Punk's actions because Drew started all of it. He attacked an injured man, and Punk is living up to his word that he's going to make his life hell.
And that he's super petty. That's his thing. Punk's like, I'm petty. I will ruin your life.
Punk doesn't
torment you.
But Punk doesn't say he's petty. Punk does not frame himself as petty. He frames himself as justified in his vengeance, which is fine. But there's a difference there. Punk might come across as petty to people in real life. His critics say that. There's definitely two sides to that. But in the storyline, that's that too. But Randall Lay says, Wade, your analysis over the past week has left out Drew attacking Punk on the Raw after the Rumble, after he tore his tricep and even stomped on it. I have brought that up, and I talked to Todd Martin about that on The Fix yesterday. I brought it up on, I don't know what other show I did. But we should have drawn more attention to that in this analysis. I will say this, though. Punk got injured in the Royal Rumble in a legal match from legal moves. And he walked out with his arm in a sling. It was already injured. He had already announced he's missing WrestleMania. Drew did not cost Punk WrestleMania. Drew used wrestling moves against Punk, and Punk got hurt. That's not well. That doesn't make Drew.
They framed it that Drew went after his own. Like, no, obviously,
but Travis, Drew took credit for something that he clearly did not do. He said, "I prayed he'd get hurt, and you did." But the injury was the injury was a fluke. It just was a fluke in the Rumble.
Right.
It wasn't, there was nothing storyline wise. Oh, Drew's going to try to take out Punk so it can't be at WrestleMania. They added that after the fact to build this feud up. So from a canon standpoint, to use that term, absolutely, Drew sought out to injure Drew, bragged about it, said he prayed for it, and then added injury to injury by stomping the canon. The real life of it is Punk got hurt legally in a match that Drew did not do anything overly aggressive to try to hurt him in an underhanded way. And that just simply exacerbated it the next night, but Punk had already announced he'd miss WrestleMania. So this idea that, oh, Drew cost me WrestleMania isn't true, except for this retroactive thing they pasted on top of Punk's injury. So, to me, to Ryan and Randall, it's relevant. It absolutely should be part of the dialogue on this. And it is canon. And Travis, like you said, I mean, Drew said, I did it. I prayed for it. It happened. But in reality, Punk just got hurt and was going to miss WrestleMania regardless of what before Drew did anything underhanded. So that's where it does Punk really come across as petty and overreacting, picking the wrong spots, kicking him in the nuts, interfering in a match, as opposed to stopping Drew from cheating or attacking him afterwards. And I just would have booked it differently, in part because this storyline books Punk in a way that completely matches what his critics said about him in real life in AEW, a guy who can't let anything go and he overreacts to words. So there's a little bit of like, are they booking this in a way?
Words. I mean, Drew did the thing with the T-shirt, with Punk's, gravestone, tombstone. It's.
Oh, Drew's been going after him big time. I'm not denying that, and Punk should be mad. I just
Twitter
really is
talking junk.
It's just a question of do you interfere in a world title match? And I know you laugh at it. Yeah, well, that's a legit point of view to have. It's a legit point of view. Let me bring Ken back in because I put him on mute. We got some background noise with Ken because of his TV or something.
Sorry about
I muted
that.
you. Yeah, that's okay. That's I muted you for that reason, but I got to unmute you and bring you back in. You can follow up on this or introduce a different question or topic if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think Drew was justified in laying him out and embarrassing him in Chicago. I mean, he kicked him. Punk kicked Drew in the balls in Glasgow. So, I mean, he was the one who drew the first blood though this time around. So, Punk's probably going to get him back and draw blood on Drew the next when he comes after him whenever it happens.
I will insert quickly here, Ken. I love this story. Like I'm not like down on it at all. Yeah, I mean, I ran a poll on Twitter and I said, is anyone tiring of Punk? And it was a minority. I don't know if it was like 18% said, yeah, the way Punk's acting in this, it's kind of turning me against him a little bit. Majority of people are still with Punk on this. And Chicago's a hard, obviously Chicago is, everyone's going to be with him. As Brock Bennington in the chat room says, Punk's actions are on brand. MZ says, I don't recall people saying Punk had carte blanche for Punk interfering. There's definitely consequences. We saw them tonight, though in kayfabe, it's on management for not resolving it. And I do agree with that aspect of it. Drew has a right to be frustrated. Yeah. Punk impersonated a referee, which should not, be legal. And I'll throw it to you, Sec Travis. And he impersonated a referee, kicked him in the nuts, interfered in a world title match. There should be ramifications for that. And Drew's frustrated because there isn't, and now there probably will be for what Drew did to Punk tonight. Yeah, Travis.
Didn't Drew quit? Wasn't this trespassing and assault? Yes. This wasn't like a wrestling context assault. This was private citizen Drew McIntyre. Drew Galloway attacked Philip Brooks and on camera, or at least implied.
Maybe it's a George Costanza thing where he just slept it off over the weekend or for the last few days. It's like, what? I was joking. I didn't really quit. All right, Ken, back to you. I interrupted you.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is kind of trespassing. It's like, dude, you're gonna beat him up and then walk right.
It's not even his show.
Right without getting like arrested or something. But it's wrestling. It's pro wrestling. You kind of have to just say, you can't really get away, do certain things that would actually happen in real life. But I think it's going to be great to see where this ultimately goes and how long they go with this and, how it all ends and who beats who in the, I'm just curious as when they do the match, who wins first, if they do like 2 or 3 matches out of this. But, I thought the night was really good. I thought, they added a little intrigue to, when shifting to like the Money in the Bank qualifiers, I thought I was really happy to see Chelsea Green steal the win. Like, I mean, I feel like she's more than earned it, given everything she's done for them and what she's been asked to do. And I thought it was intriguing. Bianca Belair didn't seem as focused on winning as, she usually is. It's like, that's interesting little sprinkle with Jade. Like, what's going to happen when Jade is in her match next week in the Garden. Mm-hmm. And then, Carmelo Hayes, he's been really down for a while. Like, he's nervous on the mic. He's kind of flubbed his lines a little bit, yet he stole the win too, pinning Randy Orton, a big legacy star. So maybe they're gonna get behind him a little bit more and see what he does in the ladder match in July. But yeah, there are some interesting finishes and interesting choices made. Andrade, I didn't think that would happen. That was a little bit surprising.
I think some of the finishes and I'll throw to you, Travis, on the Money in the Bank qualifiers here for your thoughts. I think the Money in the Bank is not going to be all top stars. They need Orton and KO and Cody to be taken on the Bloodline. So they're out. They don't want Jade and Bianca in it. I don't think Jade's going to advance either, but she might. I mean, we'll see. But it would have been interesting to have them both in the match, but that won't happen now unless there's some last chance triple threat, which they could introduce. So they're taking some of the top stars out so that they can be involved in other things. I mean, I think that's what's going on, but it is intriguing. It's not the people qualifying right now, especially I don't know, Carmelo Hayes is not going to win Money in the Bank and cash in against a world champion. That's not the path he's on. Chelsea Green could win. It could be a bit of a comedy cash in. So Travis, what are your thoughts on what Ken brings up, the qualifiers, men's or women's side, the things he brought up?
Yeah, I think they were fine. The matches themselves were fine tonight. I think they're strategic triple threats, so you don't have. So who took the pinfall? Did Bianca take the pinfall?
Meechin lost.
So things like that. So you can have the person in there to do the job, and book it in a way that everybody kind of comes out looking stronger than they went in, or at least not weaker. I'm an advocate of Chelsea Green. I think she should have won. I let my buddy Steve a couple of months talk me into, and a lot of other people, and he did this whole fantasy book that ended up with Chelsea Green winning the Women's Battle Royal a few months ago when it was vacant. When Rhea Ripley went down originally, and then Becky Lynch won that Battle Royal. He won it and talked me into Chelsea Green should be the one to win that belt, and she should then go on for all through the spring and summer, kind of honky tonk manning her way through title defenses until she just gets run through at SummerSlam or something like that by the eventual long-term champion. So her being in and getting the win the way she did tonight was right on brand. I think she's really good, and I think she's just much more of a, not as much as the other competitors and women, but she's so much more of a physical threat now than she was a year ago. I don't know if this is just me. I'm used to seeing her on TV week in and week out, but I used to have a real issue with her in the ring. She had no credibility because there was nothing particularly special about her. She's got some height and some size to her, but she's not particularly athletic. She's not particularly intense. She's not particularly wrestling prowess, that kind of thing. But she has, in the ring and in physicality, and come a long way, I think, since she's gotten some time to shine. And I don't know how she does it, because she's not featured in a ton of matches. She doesn't get a lot of matches. Maybe she's just on house shows, getting her reps in. But she's gotten a lot better. And again, it could just be that classic thing of, we all hated the name Dolph Ziggler, but you hear it for 8 months and then 12-20 years, it's not a stupid name as it was when we first heard it in 2008 or whatever it was. You just get used to things, and folks grow on you. But I think she's legit done a really good job and gotten better at the things she wasn't particularly good at.
When I first heard your name, Travis Bryant, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Ken, anything you want to follow up on there?
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I remember seeing her years ago at Shimmer when she was doing her Shimmer days, and she was pretty good back then too. She wasn't quite what she is now, but you could see she could go. She's given a chance to really do it. I mean, she can, and I don't think she's going to win the briefcase, though I think it'd be hilarious and fun to watch. And the Piper Niven dynamic with her, that'd be a very interesting dynamic. Like, is Piper Niven going to get jealous if Chelsea,
the
does win
undeserving
and
Chelsea
cash in and is
Green.
successful?
Yeah.
I mean, but I don't know. I think it's fun to watch. I think the SmackDown side of the women's scene is in pretty good shape with a lot of different, different women in different roles, and it's just you got the Nia Jax, Tiffany Stratton thing that seems to be going somewhere, and then I think I agree. I think Chelsea's going to be kind of the one to watch next month during the match. Like, what's she going to do? How's it going to play out? And then what is Piper going to do to either help her or make some sort of mistake that costs her the chance to win it? So, and yeah, and what was I? And then I just think the LA Knight segment was good with Logan Paul and I forgot his name. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Santos Escobar.
Thank you, Santos. That was pretty good. I mean, there's Logan. Logan Paul takes him out without the brass knucks. That was surprising.
Well, from
usually
behind.
He does. Yeah, from behind, but still, it's like he didn't have the knucks this time, so that was a little bit different than usual. So, and Logan drew great heat like he always does. I mean, he's really good at it, and he plays into it. So, and
it was a good follow up after last week's. Was that home thing was weird?
That was weird.
That was
like you just left. You just left. Yeah, you drank a drink. You drank a drink in his pool and floated around for, I don't know, maybe he was there for 5 minutes, maybe he was there for an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's not like a Hippie Styles LA Knight thing where it's like they're at least LA Knight got arrested. So, in case,
really. Todd Martin and I on the VIP podcast, The Fix, yesterday speculated that maybe LA Knight did some things in the house before Logan got there, and that would start to reveal itself. Like Logan would be complaining on social media about pouring sand in the sheets in his bed, or putting some
termites.
Or hiding fresh produce in a cupboard to go bad, taking it out, taking stuff out of the fridge and throwing it in. I don't know, just just little petty things, to just irritate Logan. Maybe resetting his Wi-Fi password, and Logan can't be on social. I don't know. So I'm with Travis. I wanted more than just hanging out in his pool, and I would love for it to be revealed that LA Knight just effed around in his house, with just half a dozen things to just ruin Logan's week.
LA sort of said he peed in the pool, but but Logan kind of was talking over him in the line, and the line didn't hit like I think they wanted it to, or certainly LA wanted it to, because they were just kind of talking over each other.
BJF is reminding me on the Fix. I said maybe he let some mice loose in his house, there's just now a mice infestation. And my other just very random, stupid suggestion was putting barbecue sauce in his conditioner bottle when he showered. So just stupid little things. So anyway,
but then you would have to film that way, and then it's why are you filming yourself in the shower?
Because Logan films himself constantly doing everything. I mean,
that is very true.
I bet Logan has done.
He has the shower shot with the U.S. title around his crotch. So there you
go. Sorry. Ugh. That's gross. I don't need that.
Yes. So, Ken, anything else?
No, that's it. That's really all there is. I mean, the Bloodline stuff, obviously. I mean, the playing the long game with everything, and it's just fun to watch where they're ultimately going to go, and when does Roman come back? And the question is The Rock involved with Roman not communicating with Paul Heyman? Is he the one allowing all these guys to show up?
I know. Yep.
And it's and I also, this one little thing, and I noticed this real fast at the end of the show. I noticed when Jacob Fatu was standing next to a Solo and doing the finger point, Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa looked a little hesitant and nervous when that happened, when Jacob showed up. They were he's really here. This is great, but kind of scary.
I want to watch it back.
They're a little ooh.
Yeah, I want to watch it back because it's the last thing that happened on SmackDown. I'm typing up a report, get ready to go live on YouTube, and I want to rewatch it because I know with the Bloodline segments backstage, it was always worth watching 2-3 times to catch different people's reactions, and I know they put tons of thought into every body reaction, every facial twitch, every everything. So I do want to see what you're bringing up, Ken, and watch Heyman, watch Solo's body language whenever they're on camera. There's really very few accidents when it comes to Bloodline segments. They really put a ton of thought into this. I mean, so the dynamic, part of what's going to make this Bloodline 2.0 compelling, Travis, and bring it closer to Bloodline 1.0 is going to be learning about the difference between Tonga Loa and Jacob Fatu and Solo and everybody. Like, we want to know. We want to learn the differences between them, like we did with Jay and Jimmy. Very distinct personalities. Sammy, of course, very different. So hopefully we get into that in coming weeks.
When they gave them the nicknames last week, or the moniker, the infamous and the right-hand man, before he said those, the right-hand man, I thought they were getting full name changes. I thought they were like, you know what? This is too difficult saying their names back to back. Tonga Loa. Like,
Vince McMahon special.
You're Bob and you're goddamn Joe. Like, just.
Yeah.
But I thought they were headed to get simpler or different names. But
the Vince McMahon special, where just a single name and that's it, and you're just like rolling your eyes every time it's said. So
yeah.
I mean, having a Tonga and a Tanga is too much, especially when one's a first name and one's a last name. But
right. I will say this about Money in the Bank itself. I think it's another one of those Triple H less is more kind of moves. And I don't remember if last year, because last year was Bloodline, so Bloodline focused. I don't remember the Money in the Bank specifically, but we're getting 6 people in a Money in the Bank. Not 8, not 10, not 12. 6 people, like the original Money in the Bank, like the maximum amount of people that probably should be in a match like that, considering the safety and the risks involved. Again, it's just one of those things. I think Triple H is like, you know what? Like, as far as the matches, like, let's have 5 matches on the pay-per-view, and if the show goes 2 hours and 55 minutes, big deal. Like, let's keep it tight. Less is more, and this is another sign of that. Again, it might have been implemented last year. I just don't remember, but so I'm very happy.
The less is more works in the big picture.
Yeah,
because it just makes the WrestleMania and SummerSlam, for example, just even more special.
Yeah, not having everybody on every pay-per-view, because everybody deserves to. No,
you have to earn it. I think Wade has said that before. You have to earn your slot. Yeah,
for sure.
You earn your slot. Yeah. But yeah, I also, last thing, and I'll just participate in the YouTube chat. Paul Heyman looks like he's aged like 30 years every time you see him now. Like, it's when Roman, it's like last year when his hair was all gray and then Roman came back and it was colorful again.
I love it.
All the wrinkles were gone. We're all waiting for that to happen. That's my last thing. I'll leave on that note, because Paul Heyman is just, I've said it before, he is the master. And it's like he's in his 50s, and yet you feel like he can go another 10 years if he wanted.
Oh, Heyman tells people he's just getting started. Like, I mean, when the Hall of Fame thing came up, people are like, "Are you going away?" Like, people are asking him that. I heard, and the answer he gave, he's like, "I'm just getting started. Like, I'm like halfway into my impact on this industry."
He's still in his prime, really.
Yeah. Yep. Very good, Ken. Great hearing from you. Thanks. Call again.
Thank you, Wade. Yep.
Thanks. Yep. Just want to encourage people, be a caller. You don't have to be a video caller. We don't want to scare people away if you don't want to be on video. I mean, I get that. Isn't everybody sync? So it works great with what Ken did. That was our format at Blog Talk Radio for 10 plus years. So Travis, it's leaning in too much. That freaked me out. All right. By the way, big thanks to Bid Moon for a super chat. Much appreciated. He says SmackDown is so good. AEW 500,000. Great show, guys.
You could have left that part out. Jeez.
I mean, I don't know why. I mean,
it's just one of the discourse online and the tribalism stuff, and it's like, well, comments like that.
People
gotta get your shot in. Like I get it, but
yeah. On our poll at pwtorch.com, and everybody go there now and vote. Like, take out your phones, go to the website, vote in this thing. I said, if you stopped watching AW Dynamite or cut back your viewing, what reason most closely matches your reason, I should say. And the number one reason is the storylines are less appealing. Tony Khan might argue, people have dropped cable and lost access to TBS. Only 3% have chosen that option in our poll. People are dropping off not because they don't have cable. They're dropping off because they aren't enjoying AEW as much. So number one vote getter right now, 25%, is storylines are less appealing. Number two, with 13%, is just less interested overall in the featured wrestlers. 10% say they're just watching more WWE and NXT instead. And that's the pushback too on this. Oh, it's inevitable. Cable's dropping. AEW defenders will say, oh yeah, there's fewer homes getting TBS now. And I went to my cable source and got numbers of the actual percentage of people who have USA watching it this year compared to last year. And it's down. I mean, the percentage is down. It's not just lost cable homes. I've got that story written up at pwtorch.com, so people can check that out in the ratings section. Some interesting data that I extracted. I spent more time on the ratings report this afternoon than I have in a long time when that number came in. 14% said and this is interesting, the product just feels less cool. More vibe than anything is the reason they're not watching. So yeah, I mean, but there's other options that are getting chosen too. So I'm keeping an eye on that, and it's interesting to me. Does anything about that, Travis, if you're paying attention, surprise you in terms of what people are saying about AEW's not been your thing from the beginning?
No, about 6 months in, I said I'm done with this, and that was whatever, April. Yeah. 2020, probably right in the middle of the empty shows. But I kind of gave up on wrestling as a whole for about a year and a half after that. It was a big, I was doing a pro wrestling show. I wasn't even watching pro wrestling. The shows became.
Was that a point of contention with your co-host?
No, because the gimmick became, hey, tell me what happened this week. And then it just led to a conversation. Yeah. But it sounds about right. It's all those top three, 4 issues. It's like, it's not very cool. I don't care about not any, but I don't care about most of the people that they feature. And most importantly, they can't tell a story to save their lives consistently. They can do it once or twice. They can get an MJF story that's interesting, get a Hangman thing that's going, but for up and down the card, month after month, there's nothing going on that's ever gotten me to go, okay, you know what? Like I remember in 2012, after not watching TNA Impact for 2 years at that point, the Bully Ray got hot, and everybody's talking about Bully Ray's new character and how he's just. I was like, okay. I started watching Impact again, and I've watched him for a year until it became unwatchable again, inevitably. But people are going to watch something that folks are talking about, like folks that stop watching if they hear it over and over again. Oh, you got to see this guy, you got to see this girl, you got to whatever. This new tag team is on fire. People are going to eventually go, all right, I got to see what the big fuss is, and that just doesn't happen, and because of those reasons.
Another top vote getter is too many matches are mismatches with predictable outcomes. We hear that a lot. Not 2, not 3, 5. And a lot of it is just, I'm going to put somebody against somebody two tiers lower. They're going to go 10, 12, 15 minutes, way longer than they should. I know who's going to win. And that's not what people watch wrestling for. They don't want to know the outcome and watch it take way longer than it should for somebody in a main event top tier spot to beat someone who's a third tier mid-carder. And that's actually the number 2 vote getter as I look at this right now. Just the mismatches and predictable outcomes on TV. So that just comes down to Tony needing to overhaul his booking and think of a new way to put on those shows, because so often, especially Collision Rampage, but half of Dynamite feels this way too, which is I'm just throwing matches together that I think will be good. We'll stop AEW talk after this comment, but Adam Kidd says Forbidden Door turns off those of us who aren't the hardest of hardcores. And I've always said that about AEW, about that attracting that second million. You've got they had the first million for a while. And to attract that second million, they needed to not make people feel like they weren't part of this exclusive clubhouse the way that they talked about wrestlers. And they've inconsistently been better about catching you up on who these people are. But, you see these cult heroes from Japan and Mexico show up on TV, and the live crowd's going nuts. And it's interesting for some people to see that. But others feel like, I don't even know who they are, and they're not telling me this isn't for me. And so there's a lot of things AEW could do. But, yeah. Anyway, like I said, we'll move on. Let's bring Rude Dog into the video chat here. Rude Dog, good to see you again. Welcome. What's in your mind about Smackdown tonight?
Hey,
love the T-shirt.
Oh yeah, right on. Bruiser Brody. I got new lighting, so I don't look like a troll in a basement now. So it's good to be back with you, Wade. Good.
We'll vote for our favorite background if you keep doing this.
Okay. Good to talk to you, Travis. Yeah. So I I kind of want to focus more on the Punk Drew thing. Like, you guys have touched on it quite a bit, but after Clash of the Castle, like, you were wondering, are fans gonna start turning on Punk and be more on Drew's side because he got screwed over and has been talking a lot of truth. And of course, we're in Chicago. Punk is gonna get a great response, and he really hammed it up thick. Like, he was really like being the ultimate babyface.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, after Drew's drastic actions today, there will be the same type of response in other cities going forward?
Travis, how much of tonight's reaction for Punk? I mean, obviously, so he's going to get cheered more in Chicago than anywhere else. There's no shame in being cheered less. That's just it's like people go, "Oh, there's such a drop off after WrestleMania season." Imagine if there wasn't. People would say WrestleMania isn't special anymore. Of course, there's going to be a drop off. You want that because otherwise you haven't succeeded in making WrestleMania feel huge. Punk in Chicago should feel bigger than any other city, and it will. But what do you think about tonight's Chicago-centric love letter that Punk wrote in his promo to the Chicago fans? Was it pitch perfect? Was it too much? Is it going to translate? And do you buy it all? Hearing us, seeing people in the chat room comment about maybe there's some people who are going to be on Drew's side on this because Drew's been so witty and entertaining, and Punk has, to some people's in some people's way of looking at it, overreacted to verbal taunting. So online and on TV. So is there any chance Punk sees a drop off in popularity, or do you think this was a good momentum getter to remind everybody who Punk is? Because that was a hell of a performance from Punk on the microphone. I mean, confident, interacting with the fans on his way to the ring, body language. Yeah. I mean, that was vintage Punk.
Yeah. When was the last time maybe it was just one of those, he's just happy to be in that environment. Not in Chicago, but I mean, able to come down to the ring, come to ringside, and just be able to talk and connect with the fans. It's been a little while because he's been dealing with the injury, so maybe he just really just felt it. And again, that crowd giving that energy, I'm sure helped. I thought everything was, as pitch perfect as it can go, specifically looking back because of how the night was going to end for him. I think that was the point, like just kind of being jolly and just happy to be in Chicago. And again, the love letter to Chicago, as you called it, because he knew it was going to it was going to be a little somber moment later on when his head's bleeding and he's getting stretchered off. So maybe it was a bit sappy and a little much in the moment, but then looking back, you're like, oh, okay, that was probably bring them all the way up here because their guy's about to get brutally beat down.
All right, Rude Dog, back to you.
Well, I'm not sure if you answered my question. Do you think Punk will still be received as a babyface throughout, and Drew being perceived as a heel, like through other venues besides Chicago?
Yeah, I don't see any major change with the alignments of their characters, heel and babyface. I would be very shocked if all of a sudden we showed up in Topeka, Kansas, and people were turn on Punk. Drew's been a good scumbag. Like, you might go, he's got some points, but any good heel, should have some points and be correct in some ways. But he is clearly the bad guy, the bad human being in this situation. And Punk might be the petty guy, but he didn't.
Drew has that sympathetic story as a babyface, having heels cheat and cost him opportunities, and peaking during the pandemic and not having the crowd there. There's this whole origin story of who Drew has become, which is bad luck and the company not standing up for him when he was wronged. I mean, it happens all the time. It's pro wrestling, but you don't want to become numb to it. when you're cheated due to interference, and almost every Roman Reigns title defense involved, interference. Drew had a reason to grow frustrated. And I think that story that a lot of these fans live through in real time is why some are sympathetic to Drew and giving him more slack for being as bitter as he is, because he is bringing up things that people saw with their own eyes happen to him. And that's why I think they have to be extra careful. If the goal is for him to be universally booed, they got to be careful that they don't have Punk come across as overreacting and being a continuation of a story that fans feel a little sympathy towards Drew for having gone through prior to his overt heel turn.
Like he said, stay tuned, or whatever he said to Jackie Redmond, like, come see me on Monday, or I'll say more Monday. Right. I think he's not going to babyface himself in that promo. He's going to be like, I told you, Punk. Well, I told you, you cost me, and I'm going to hurt you, and he's going to be mean and say just sadistic sounding things and gloat about hurting Punk, and that's not a thing an admirable babyface does. So I think there's ways to combat any kind of, or to head off any kind of sustained or popular uprising of babyface support for Drew. I think Punk is fine, but I don't think Drew is going to get any support. I think a good promo. I think he'll continue what he's doing, and he'll get the heat. He won't be ambiguous about where he stands as far as like being a decent person. It'll be the same thing it's been the last couple months. Like, yeah, we get you, Drew. You have a good point, Drew, but you went too far, Drew. Or you could stop being such a baby about it, Drew. It's always that second part to his story the last 2 years.
So a couple chat room comments. MZ says, I heard some cheers for Drew tonight. I think fans are heavily invested for both and the entire feud. BJF says, I think Drew was dastardly enough tonight to negate any sympathy the crowds may have for him. And let's see. Adam Kidd says they both have deplorable traits. So, Rude Dog, what do you think? What's your prediction over the next month? Given the trajectory we're on, and your assessment and prediction of how they'll handle what happened.
Well, I was just confused. Why did Drew? You guys barely touched on it for a bit. Why did Drew retire or quit and then show up?
He quit because the company isn't standing up for him. I think he wanted more. He's obviously on his. He's like, it was a final straw for. He's frustrated with the company, and they didn't do anything. I mean, he should have been offered a title rematch. Punk screwed him over. Interfered in a pinfall by not counting a third time. Not that it would have been official if he did, but frankly, Punk, why didn't the ref who told Punk where the spare T-shirts were? Why didn't that referee run to the ring and count the pin? Drew should be upset at the referee crew. He should be upset that he wasn't told by Adam Pearce, you're going to get a rematch. That is not how we do things here. You can say all the things you want about Punk. We find you for what you did to Punk back after the Rumble. That's in the past, but what Punk did deserves ramifications, and you deserve a title rematch. I think Punk, the character Drew McIntyre, storyline-wise, is looking for that. Him showing up tonight was not in an official capacity. He banged on a garage door. They opened it, and there was Punk's body. Who's going to stop him? Security was trying to keep Bray Wyatt and his crew out of the building. So Drew just marches out, dumps Punk, and then within 10 seconds, Nick Aldis and Jason Jordan, all these people are running out to get him out of the building.
Within 10 seconds of him getting to the stage, which was within 120 seconds at least, but from the time
fair enough,
banged on the garage door and walked all the way through with his man's body dripping blood, and then they got to him 10 seconds after he got to the stage. So as that happened, I thought, oh, there's Wade's when he's about management not liking. Should management be happy that Punk's interfering in matches? Maybe they're like, see, that's what you get, Punk. Like I said about Drew, she hadn't been talking shit. That's what you get, Punk. You should have been, but
yeah. So Bruce Bennington says Drew wants justice. He's just going about it the wrong way. So Rude Dog, I think Drew has not rescinded his resignation as a wrestler for WWE. He just needed to get revenge on Punk. It's curious for him to say, but I'm going to be at Raw on Monday. I think I would have liked more commentary from Graves and Barrett saying, Drew, you quit. You're not going to be welcome in the building after what you just did to Punk. Graves can just go, I don't think there's any way they let Drew in the building. He quit. There's going to be ramifications for what he did. Barrett could push back and go, well, where are the ramifications for what Punk did to Drew in Scotland? Have a little back and forth, represent both sides. But then Graves can come back and go, you know what? There's no way anyone's going to stop Drew from making his presence known on Monday. He knows these arenas. He knows how they're configured. He's going to find a way to get in. And then Barrett can go, hey, I want to hear what he has to say. I hope Adam Pearce gives him a microphone. He was screwed over in Scotland. We didn't hear from him Monday. Now that he's cooled off. I think we all should hear what he has to say. And I hope he rescinds his quitting the company. There's a lot of things that they can do that I think fall within the realm of, making sense. I mean, my perspective broadly, macro speaking, is I think, actions that are outside the realm of beating people up after the bell rings and stopping when the bell rings to end a match, that should have ramifications consistently, because I think it numbs people to cheating and chicanery and all that. If you just act like, well, that's what's done. I go so far as to say security guards shouldn't get beat up every week. I think that's a dumb cliche, and it's
by baby faces, especially Cody Rhodes should not be beating up security. First of all, Cody Rhodes shouldn't be able to beat up a team of big, beefy security guys. Like, I get it. He's a pro wrestler, but come on, he's still Cody Rhodes, 5'10",
I don't know about that. He's more than 5'10".
Sure.
I'm
Cody
a little taller.
Randy Orton, he's one, but it's not Braun
Cody,
Strowman. It's like my kind of what I'm getting at.
Yes.
Like, Braun Strowman want to beat up, but certainly not babyface. Lead face of the company.
No, they're doing their job. They're doing their job, and right. It's like when interviewers get bullied by wrestlers and treated like crap. It's like it's equivalent of like just
minimum wage workers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just so. But I don't get too far down that road. But my point is, if you want what Drew did, if you want what Punk did, if you want what heels do, if you want this stuff to count, management needs to be consistently and consistent in their outrage and their reaction to it, and they're not. And I would vote for that. I think it creates some structural issues that make telling your story more complicated. But I think ultimately the payoff is better when you pay attention to that kind of detail. Rude Dog, back to you.
Yeah, I guess they made it just a little more confusing than it needed to be. Like, I don't know why Drew had to quit. Like, I mean, I guess, but whatever. I mean, I think we're just going to get that match at SummerSlam, and that would be that. Yeah. And
I do wonder, and and this is pure speculation, reckless speculation, one might say. I wonder if they did this angle because Punk had a setback in rehab, and they actually have to extend it to time before he's able to wrestle again. That they're in Chicago, let's do an angle, let's plant seeds about Heyman, but he actually won't be ready soon, because they did hint at that. I mean, they said, we don't know if this is going to delay him being medically cleared. So I don't think that's a case, because Punk seemed fine. Like he was able to do, Drew dropped him off his shoulders onto a floor.
Onto his bad arm. He caught himself with his bad arm.
Exactly. So I think Punk is fine, but that, I'm just saying across my mind, what if this is to actually buy themselves some time, because it was a pretty hardcore, off-camera beatdown. So we'll see. But I mean, it's going to do good business, and I'm looking forward to the match. And I want Punk to have like 6 really good matches before he gets injured again. I don't want like 3 minutes into the first match. I know, to have him like, and wrestlers are slipping on ropes these days, and I mean, catching their, what happened to Damian Priest at the Clash. My God, it's just like Punk just work. I'm trying to think who's like work Miz style. People are going to hate me for like Miz bragged, like, I don't take chances. I've been healthy my whole career. Never missed a date. Like Punk's gotta, like when Punk came out to the crowd, he starts jumping on chairs and hopping on.
That's how you broke your foot the first time.
Exactly.
Punk. Jeez, have you not learned anything?
Yes. Brock Benningfield in chat room says CM Glass. So yeah, between CM Punk and Adam Cole, who returns first, is Kramanakal. I love these nicknames. But yeah, it is a good feud, and if everyone stays healthy, I mean, when the promos are going to be great, the matches are going to be great, and it's fun to see. I mean, as Punk's coming out, I'm just like, I can't believe in 2024 we're seeing really good Punk content right now, minus backstage drama, which is nice. Which
so far,
well, I mean, yes, so far, that is a true statement. You might be mocking people to say that, but so far, Rude Dog, anything else you want to bring up?
I can't believe you guys already brought it up, but I actually wanted to touch on Chelsea Green. Like I was like, well, I don't know when I'm gonna get on, but I'll at least no one will be talking about Chelsea Green. But you guys are already like hyping her up, and I was like, oh geez, like she's really impressed me. To me, she's like the female version of the R-Truth character in WWE, and she's just really entertaining, and I would love to see her have a Money in a Briefcase role, even if she lost it or whatever. Like, I mean, I just thought it would be so much fun.
Yeah, that'd definitely be a way to have an off year where someone doesn't win when they cash in. They can cash in and actually fail and not hurt their character.
Or she wins and it's a fun honky tonk man type thing where she just wins by kind of fluke for a while. I mean, she's really entertaining. She's really good at what she does. She's definitely passable in the ring right now, which we talked about earlier. And so, I mean, I think a lot of, Jason Paul in his report over ProWrestling.net was like, rooting for, Chelsea doing this also. I mean, I think it's good that they're rewarding her good work, her good character work, and more than competent work in the ring. Jason Paul wrote over at ProWrestling.net in his SmackDown report, I should give credit. Jake Barnett did the report on this. Chelsea stealing the win was unexpected, but not a bad choice. She's been great lately and earned a push. I mean, there's just a lot of praise for Chelsea going around, and deservedly so. She's good at what she's doing. And I was actually disappointed Piper Niven stepped up and became a more serious character, because I thought Piper playing off of Chelsea was really fun chemistry. It was very entertaining. And I mean, she can still do that, but if Piper's going to strip away some of the fun aspect of her character, it might mean she can move up the card, but it also will take away some of the interactions with Chelsea I was looking forward to. Rude Dog, anything else?
No, totally. And one last thing, and then I'll let you go. I know there's other people. So Jacob Fatu was the big surprise at the end, which I definitely wasn't expecting. I mean, I saw some.
That's because we don't do spoilers on this show.
Well, I'm glad you don't.
I think we've all been expecting it for so long that when it finally happened, it's like, oh, right.
Because they signed it back in April, and people were going, oh, yeah, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. And, I mean, I talk about signings, but I don't just harp on it, because I kind of when it happens, it'll happen. But I don't want to know ahead of time. And it crossed my mind that something like that would happen. I'm glad it wasn't the Fiend stuff, Bo Dallas and Uncle. I'm glad that it just stayed centric to this. But I thought it had really high impact. I thought they did a good job with it, and I thought the timing was right. And so anyway, I mean, I know some people like to know when things are going to happen ahead of time, but I don't seek it out. And when I hear it, I don't go out of my way to bring it up just to, show off, hey, I know what's going to happen and I'm going to ruin it for you guys. Because I think it's more fun when you don't know exactly when it's going to happen. And thankfully, WWE's good about hiding that stuff. I mean, you can't hide trademarks being registered for, and people were getting out about somebody signing and hanging out at WrestleMania like Jacob Fatu did. But you can keep in a very small circle when that debut is happening, and WWE did that.
Well,
we have a quick Rude Dog. Follow up on that, but before you go, someone in the chat has a question for you.
Oh,
but finish your thought.
Well, I mean, I was just saying, where do you see Fatu landing? Like, to me, he is the Solo Sikoa to Solo Sikoa the way Solo Sikoa was to Roman Reigns, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. I think there's a chance that, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a chance that Fatu ends up being bigger than Solo when it comes to short-term main events, because of the way they're portraying him. But it's also they can portray him as the unhinged, truly crazy, uncontrollable guy who just isn't going to get title matches, but he's just wreaks havoc and he's just the chaos, sparks chaos. But Solo is still the one who ends up being the the main event guy. And Travis, what's your impression? Would you rather see Solo headlining SummerSlam and big PLEs against world champions, or do you think Jacob Fatu is intriguing enough, and his body work in MLW is such where people have been touting him as the guy to get, regardless of Bloodline 2.0. People have been saying, of all the people out there, AW and WWE, Jacob Fatu's the guy who's going to come in and just immediately look like he belongs to the top tier the way he carries himself.
Yeah, the only MLW stuff I know and followed week to week for 12 weeks was when Jacob Fatu was there and on top doing his thing and wrecking shop. As far as who I'd rather see, him or Solo, at this point, I got to say Solo, just because it's like, all right, I saw this guy for 3 minutes on WWE TV tonight, and he had a stupid snarl on his face the whole time, and he's clearly just going to be an unhinged savage that, hopefully isn't like eating raw fish and doing those stupid, gimmicks like they did in the 80s with his dads and uncles and stuff.
Some of the first WWF promos I ever saw in syndication in the mid 80s were often Sika eating raw fish during interview segments. So yeah.
So I immediately I'm like, all right, he's making that face that I'm an idiot savage face. So I kind of shut down, like, okay, he's beating guys up, but I didn't get overly excited because I instantly kind of felt like, we're about to go here, are we? So I'll hold out judgment. Just haven't seen enough of him. So I'll say Solo at this point. Okay, but that's just not fair to affect.
It's too early. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know yet, and I don't know what they have in mind. I'll start asking around now that he's there. I'll try. Without giving anything away, I'll characterize whether they see him as a bodyguard sidekick type or a guy who's going to be the main guy in the ring, who's the biggest threat to titles. The question for you, Rude Dog from BJF is your name a reference to the 80s animation Rude Dog and the Dweebs?
Yeah, it definitely has something to do with that. But it's also based on my cat named Rudy, who acts like a dog, so I call him Rude Dog.
Ah, cool.
And so I am very familiar with the Rude Dog cartoon, and they had their own clothing line back in the 80s or 90s, and I had some of it. I have a couple Rude Dog VHS tapes, so I'm very familiar, but there's a whole lot of Rude Dog going on.
Cool. Good to see you again. Enjoy the change in backdrop. Thanks, Rude Dog. Good contributions as always.
Great talking to you guys.
All right. Some chat room comments. Ken Arnold says, Paul Levesque clearly wants to keep people thinking and guessing based on the hints or implications made during shows about what's to come. And I enjoy that as a viewer and fan. He also said WWE creative and management have always been good at keeping big surprises very close to the vest, as well as big payoffs to feuds and angles. Let's see. Kramanakal says, Travis, I'll give you 2 months and you'll say Solo ain't nothing next to Jacob Fatu. Trust me, Jacob Fatu can be the guy. Let's see. Yeah, Fatu's way better than Solo. WWE ain't ready for Jacob. Anyway. I guess he had something else on this at the beginning. I was expecting either a third Toggin brother or Jacob since the first segment of the show when they said KO, Randy, and Bloodline had to stay backstage. Yeah. they if you know how they work, your antenna should have been up for something. Once everybody was kind of saying whenever they say very specific people will not be at ringside, it's sort of the letter of the law will be adhered to, but there will be some asterisk or, trap door or something that leads to something else going on. And that is what happened here. And I thought Solo played it well. The fake begging off and pretending to be scared and then
the smile. Yeah.
It's very pro wrestling, but I thought he milked it just right. Cool. Okay. So, Travis, what else on this show do you want to bring up next? I got more I want to talk about, but anything on your at the forefront.
Well, on this show, no, I don't. I think I'm less high on this show than a lot of folks are. I thought it was a fine show. I want to know what was, since I'm like, I guess now back in the swing of things, and now when stories come up, I can actually like read them and not feel like, oh, I don't want to spoil myself. What was the reaction? Because the limited reaction I saw after Monday, after Raw went off the air, was great job, well done. This is going to be awesome. And I feel kind of like I did 4 years ago, whenever this kind of stuff was introduced the first time around. Like, well, this isn't going to work in a pro wrestling context. And here we go again. They're doing these over the top Wyatt stuff, and like Chad Gable is the body's
been removed.
He's
been removed from the qualifying match this Monday because of that.
It's stupid, and I hate it already. I hate it already.
Todd Martin, have you heard Todd yet from the Fix yesterday? He went off on this. He does not think it works in a pro wrestling.
We have history of it not working. Like, people might think, oh, it was creative, and it was, Wyatt had him and Vince working together, and the segments were fun, and the firehouse and all that stuff. This is it's corny, and it doesn't work, and it just reminds me that I'm watching a bunch of fake nonsense. These are the best masks that they've done. Like, shut up with their. This isn't an arts and crafts exhibition. This isn't who's got the best set design. Does this work? Are people? Yeah, I'm over it already. I'm over it already.
I love it.
My question to you was, what was the overall kind of reaction? Were people just kind of positive? And because that's I saw.
No. I mean,
obviously not Todd Martin, but I mean,
I'm
fan reaction.
I mean, I'm not on like social media enough to get a scientific, assessment of that. But I mean, on our post show Monday, people wanted to talk about it, and I think the reason I think it's not like this hard pushback on it. I mean, people that like it aren't going to like it. People who are intrigued with it and accept it and embrace it being in pro wrestling, but think there's room to critique it and try to steer it in a better direction, are showing up too. And the issue is, Paul, I talk about the Bray Wyatt documentary a lot because I thought it was more honest and forthcoming than I expected in terms of Bray Wyatt driving people a little nuts, being just scattershot all over the place. This kind of creative guy who just would go into the, his kind of man cave bunker and do his art and, whatever, and then come out of it with all these new ideas that totally, mess with the ideas he had a week earlier. And then Paul Levesque going, the challenge, and Levesque's in charge of this. And this was Levesque's assessment of Bray Wyatt and The Fiend and all of that, is it was hard to get Bray Wyatt to look far enough ahead to see how we could end what his creative process and how to have it end in the ring. And that's the business we're in, is our stories end inside a wrestling ring with a wrestling match where the goal is to win, pinfall, submission, whatever. Levesque should do more pinfalls and submissions, by the way, and fewer run-ins and DQs, but that's another topic. And so he's cognizant of the fact that Bray Wyatt came up with a lot of good ideas, but really disregarded the business he was in, needing a satisfying conclusion to take place inside the ring. And so that gives me some hope that Levesque has put thought into this, that he and Bo Dallas, everybody involved in this, are aware that was an issue with Bray. And we may not, nobody's going to top the creative performances of Bray Wyatt, Firefly Funhouse. I mean, there were things he did that were just, absolutely special. And it's one of the reasons that a lot of bad writing and platitudes and bad, kind of disappointing matches, it didn't matter to a lot of people because he was such a compelling, charismatic alpha character. So that's missing. But what might be gained, and this is where I'm taking a wait and see attitude, because I was hit or miss on Bray. I mean, I didn't have a hard and fast rule that I hate it, but I didn't think, let's just forgive all the things that were shortcomings in it. I thought a lot of his promos were just word salads. So Levesque wants there to be, in the end, a payoff in the ring. And So let's give them a chance to show that they can do that. I like that, they had security tonight saying we want to keep the Wyatts out, but they didn't spend a lot of time talking about them. Tonight did not come across as if it was a company that said the official thing we're going to do is talk incessantly about the Wyatt sickos, the Wyatt Six, I should say. And make it seem like we're mad, but all we can do is talk about them and promote them. They did a brief recap, but it was focused on other things. And I think that's good because it sells the idea through exclusion that is not an official act. We're not endorsing it. We're going to catch you up on what happened because it was a big deal.
We can't not catch you up.
Yeah, but we're not going to just, and we got security here. We're going to keep them out. But they didn't say tune in. I don't think did they say tune in Monday to see the latest on the new faction? They didn't. So the key for me, and I don't know how they do this, and they can't do it as well as ideally I'd like. But with what they did, that's criminal. I mean, like, there's things in wrestling you can do, chop block somebody from behind at ringside. Okay, hit someone with a chair, fine. But when you leave people bloodied and gorilla, and you're not an official wrestler,
2 rooms full of people that somehow all happened with no one past that curtain getting wind of it. That's why I almost want them to say, hey, that fog, that mysterious, like, creepy fog, that wasn't just scenery and backdrop. That was like some kind of knockout gas, and everybody slumped over was knocked out because some weird knockout gas was in the ventilation system or something. Yeah, I don't know how you explain Chad Gable's bloody head, but maybe you just don't. Yeah.
Travis, were you an X-Files viewer fan at all?
I was not, and am not.
Okay. So I use the analogy. One thing about X-Files, and I didn't watch all the seasons, but early on when it first was on for years, I watched it. And what I liked about it is you had, Mulder and Scully, and one was into, had the confirmation bias of, I think that's the right way to use that, the phrase in this case, if he wanted there to be extraterrestrials, he wanted there to be supernatural. And Scully is like, nope, there's scientific reasons behind this. We can explain everything. And every episode gave both audiences something, which is, there's this explanation that maybe makes sense now that we've investigated it. It's not supernatural. It's not extraterrestrial. But there was enough doubt that the people who wanted this to be proof of, life elsewhere and all that. So they gave time to both. And so when you watch the show, at the end, you could have a discussion with someone else going, what do you think? And I want that here. I don't want supernatural that can't be explained. I want, and I've heard they're not going to do supernatural. So, but I don't want them to be able to do things that there's just no plausible explanation for. Like, they like having an intern who's with them covertly turning things off and on and turning off microphones, cutting off phone service, and no one can call 911, whatever. Put thought into that. It doesn't have to be ironclad perfect, but pay some attention to that. Give some attention to those who are just not liking how much this is out of the normal rules of engagement and the canon of the world that pro wrestling exists in. And so we'll see if this is different and maybe bring some extra people in who did not like what we saw with Bray before. Travis.
Where was Triple H's body and all of that?
Oh, is he in on it? No.
Well, yes, of course. But no. Yeah, where was his body? He's in Gorilla. We've seen him when folks go through, when they do that, walkthrough that they love doing nowadays. Mm-hmm. You'll catch his little bald head over there, head down. Yep. So we know he's there. We know he's there just because that's that position where he's going to be. But we also know he's there because we've seen him in those shots. But I was looking for when they went back, because of course I knew what was going to happen. I was looking like, are they going to show like maybe a suit jacket? Kind of like maybe not Triple H's full, but like somebody in a suit jacket slumped over that could have been Triple H, but they didn't. The only notable folks I saw was Chad Gable.
You just have
rooms full of people.
You could have Levesque, just have Levesque's like suit, and like I don't know if he wears jewelry, just like a ring, all just in a pile on the floor, like they melted him,
like he raptured.
yes. So I am absolutely ready to trash this. I mean, I am. If they're sloppy and like irresponsible, and they just, you have a room full of people who just are like, this has never been done before, let's do this. And it's like, there's very rarely been a good idea in pro wrestling that drew money that was prefaced with, no one's ever done this before, because there's like really smart people who thought of it and decided not to do it because it was a bad idea. So the idea is do things that have been done before with new characters in a new context with better production values and put a little extra spin on it to make it unique to these circumstances. But there's only so many things you can do in pro wrestling. And if you're doing something that's never been done before, you're probably breaking, the structure that makes it all work. So anyway, yeah. Cool. Okay. So oh, by the way, have I asked you what you think of Graves and Barrett as an announce team, just generically speaking? Like,
I like them.
Yeah.
I like the announcing team setup the way it is now. When they first kind of, I think they sent Cole to Raw to be with Pat McAfee or whatever. Like McAfee and Cole were on SmackDown, and now they're doing Raw, and I think that's for McAfee's fall, football schedule. Because the thing was, he can't be there Friday and then show up for NCAA or whatever game day live the next morning. But if he works on Monday night, he's got an entire week. So in the fall, he doesn't have to completely give up his WWE announcing job. But I like both sets of announcers, Barrett and Graves. Not especially, but I like Cole and McAfee. I really like Barrett and Barrett's when he said the thing about Punk. Like he should be fired. Like I like when he goes to those places because it was justified. It was the right amount of rage. He hits those notes well. I think he's turned into a really solid announcer, and I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. Any of these guys, I think the setup and the two-man setup again, getting back to just kind of less is more. Yeah, I like it. I'm happy with the announcing situation.
We're almost 100 minutes into the show. We have peak viewership at the moment. We are not losing people. We're gaining people. So welcome, everybody. Hope you check out the show from the beginning. If you missed it, or just download the show. If it's easier to podcast it, search Wade Keller in your podcast app and subscribe to both the Red Logo Show and the Blue Logo Show so that you can download our shows. So, like I said, we got on the Blue Logo Show, the main podcast. Greg Parks joined me on the flagship this week. We talked a lot about the Wyatt 6 and the follow-up to that, a lot about AEW too. The Blue Logo Show features our weekly flagship, and this weekend we'll have that, as I noted, the 10 years ago 2.5-hour interview with Sean Waltman, including what was previously a VIP exclusive portion for about the last hour or so of it. So good stuff there. Again, search Wade Keller, subscribe to both, and then search PW Torch. Also, separately, that'll give you the PW Torch daily cast feed that includes the weekly podcast Acknowledging WWE with Kevin Duncan and Charlie Kate. They're like two wrestling dads who love WWE and have a really good chemistry, and it's a real fun new addition to the lineup. So if you're into WWE, definitely check that out. But we got shows dedicated to AEW and other specific topics. The 90s Pastcast is a blast. PW Torch 90s Pastcast, where they look at a Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter from 30 years ago this week and go in depth on it. It's just really cool stuff there. So why did I originally bring that up? Oh, because people are joining us in progress. So with that said, Travis, early in the show, I brought up where are they going with Punk and Heyman and Roman and the Bloodline. What do you think about the seeds they planted regarding that?
I don't know specifically. I don't have any specific thoughts. Modern day 2-man power trip. Like I don't like yeah. Punk and Roman, full circle from 2014 to being, TV companions. I don't think so. I just don't think they'd work as a duo together against each other. Sure, yeah, that would be cool. Yeah. Like Heyman loves them both, and he's got a special place, obviously for both those guys. But they hate each other, and they're gonna wrestle. But I think we're a long ways away from that.
I do too.
If we ever even get there.
And it might have just been a vehicle to further the idea that Solo's going into business for himself, defying what Heyman wants, what Roman wants, and maybe Rock's pulling strings, maybe he's not. And it doesn't lead to any further alliance with Heyman and Punk on air. I mean, that very well could be, but it's there for it's there to exploit if they want to. I mean, that the idea of Punk and Roman teaming up, against two members of the new bloodline, and whose side is Heyman on, or Heyman's just clearly with Roman and Punk. There's all kinds of, and by the way, Punk might have a heel run in him in WWE, and so Punk going heel against Roman with Heyman in his corner as babyface is fascinating. Or Heyman resents Roman for not returning his texts for all these months and goes and gets Punk to go to the dark side, and you got a crowd chanting "F you, Punk," and we want Roman, with Heyman managing Punk. I mean, honestly, they can make a lot of things work with these personalities.
People are talking about War Games and Roman being on the other, bloodline versus bloodline, new bloodline versus old bloodline kind of War Games deal. And if you imagine you have Punk as the fourth, Roman, the Usos, and Punk, and against Solo and the three goons, and Punk is the reason, or it comes off as the reason that the baby faces lose, and that's the Punk, the start of the Punk heel turn on Roman. And what we got by the time March or April rolls around is Punk versus Roman with Heyman kind of, I don't think, who knows in June what could happen next April. But one thing that intrigued me was folks talking about War Games, and I think that's probably what they're building to, new bloodline versus old bloodline come November.
Ken Arnold says, well, Paul Heyman said to Solo that CM Punk is off limits, and Roman said it's fine with him. Reigns has respect for that friendship and bond. Mike Myers, PW Torch contributor, who writes the WWE Main Event TV reports and former co-host rotation, says, great to see Travis. I miss the East Coast cast every ... week. So there we are. A great build up. We have a super chat. Thank you, Brock, for that. Super chats I'm loving super chats. Brock Benningfield says, PWT podcasts are a must listen for me. I discovered Wade from another podcaster. Thanks for everything you do, guys. Thank you, Brock, for your support very much, and for your kind words. It helps keep us going. Compliments and super chats are a cool thing to have here. I love chat. What do you think about this live chat format, Travis, compared to, because the chat room at Blog Talk in the early years was really hopping. Yeah. And then they had technical problems like so often, and it wasn't compatible with some browsers, and I kind of dropped away from doing it. But I really love this, and in part because sometimes I just have questions about what happened, and like three people who just pop up and go, "This like I wasn't paying attention to the Chad Gable medical update. He's been removed from the match, but now added back. He's been cleared, so he is not dead. He's not too badly injured. But I love getting this kind of, in addition to the video callers and the email.
For sure.
Email. It's
fun. This is what we did the last 6 or 8 weeks of the East Coast Cast live show. So I'm familiar with the StreamYard format and the thing. It was just getting people, shy folks, to get them call in like that. That was in it. And also it's so much easier on Blog Talk to just call in and just be on your phone, listen in. If you want to do, you hit the thing and you get on. And it was just an extra step. Like, you can't be on the bus. I guess you could if you.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure.
Sometimes
I'm probably on his phone because
I walk my dog. I walk my dog and have YouTube playing, but it's easier if it's a podcast. Because the screen isn't gonna accidentally get whatever. But there's room for podcasting and video. Videos too. I mean, live streams. So they both have their place, and that's why we do both. That's why but it's been a fun format. I want to go to Greg in Waterloo, Iowa. He is a Patreon supporter, so thank you, Greg, for that. By the way, patreon.com/PWTorchVIP. If you want to support us through Patreon, that allows you to get all our podcasts that are free, but with the pre-recorded ads and plugs removed. And it also, if you go up in the higher tiers, you get other exclusive content in terms of podcasts, newsletters, and articles. So check that out if you're so inclined to support us in that way. And the VIP membership, I'll put on the screen here. You can pause or look at it and browse what you get with the VIP membership as I read Greg's email here. Greg said, I hope to connect for audio in future shows. Good show tonight with big developments. I kind of expected Roma to return. Ooh, I did not. But I do think that his return will be an even bigger deal the longer he's gone. It was one of those shows where only the big stars got entrances. That said, it was nice to see people other than the established stars win the qualifying matches. I'm pleasantly surprised by the fact that Jade and Bianca, who I refer to as the two-women bar trip, are not just running over everyone else, which is something that I feared was going to be the case. I'm glad to see a number of women continue to get featured regularly, which I did not think was going to be the case. Travis, what do you think of what we're seeing with Bianca and Jade Cargill, tonight's developments, and just in general? You've had this. You're like the person who binges a TV series at if it's released weekly, on HBO or something, and then you just wait till like week 7 and you just binge all the episodes. I just did that with Sweet Tooth, the first 2 seasons over the past few weeks. So yeah, what have you thought of Jade and Bianca and their portrayal, comparisons to the Road Warriors and how dominant they've been, the challenge of having opponents that are credible against them, and now they're in Money in the Bank? I don't expect Jade to win next week. I think they're going to want to keep them out of it, but I mean, there's a way to make it work too. So yeah, your thoughts?
I've liked them. I've liked their what seems like genuine friendship and how they've gotten that come across on air, that they probably push each other. I think there's probably friendly competition to be like, if you're Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill shows up, that's motivation to not slack off, your cardio or your crunches, because look at those abs that Jade got. I can't be slacking especially if I'm going to be literally standing next to her and, we're wearing similar outfits and doing like a bit of a tag team gimmick. But I've enjoyed their interactions from start to finish, from them meeting and kind of just going, it's that thing of like, I know women like this, and this is how they get along, and how they walk down the aisle or down backstage and the camera's catching them. It's just good, and it's nice to see that they can. You can tell they have a ton of input in what they are doing. Like they get some say, probably a decent amount of say in how they are presented, and I think that's why it comes across as genuine as it does. In the ring, it's Jade's rough at times, and I hadn't noticed until it wasn't a noticeable thing through watching their matches until the pay-per-view, where it was just a botch fest, and she had the big visual botch with the springboard that she missed, but the whole match was just a bit of a mess. And some matches are like that, and that's pro wrestling for you, no matter who's in there. I think she's fine. I think she's just only going to get better. I think they've showed that they've done well for themselves the last 8-12 weeks.
MM in the chat room says, I've observed that Bianca looks even more fit and stronger than before. I think that must be in part because of Jade being in the company. Bianca takes the strong guest EST moniker very seriously. And I mean, eventually, obviously, they're going to wrestle each other. Do you have a preference and a prediction on who's the heel, who's the face? Or do you think it 60-40, 50-50 could go either way depending on how this evolves?
I think Jade is probably the more natural heel. And I think the story, it's easier to, not even about being easier, but it's certainly, I think would work better because of time on the roster. Jade could easily get full of herself and not need Bianca anymore and start treating Bianca as a bit of an afterthought. Like, well, I'm the real star. When I first got here, I would, and that, I think that's the easier story to tell. I don't think Bianca is veteran enough to tell the story of the veteran being jealous of the rookie. And I don't think you want to do, I'm jealous because she's for the sake of being jealous. That's lazy and counterproductive in the stories you want to be telling with women these days. Just cattiness that isn't going to cut it. There needs to be something behind it, whether professional or something personal, like a rookie getting ahead of herself and getting too big for her britches and that kind of thing, or not needing her friend anymore, or taking Bianca for advantage of Bianca, or taking her for granted. There's a million ways you could do it. I think Jade as the heel in that situation is the way to go, and probably would be work best for both those two.
Brock in the chat room says, I'd like to see Bianca as a heel again someday. You know, she's really good in NXT in that role. MM says, I think fans would go with Bianca over Jade. So, I mean, you can just take people on a ride and steer them how you want based on how they act. You know, they're both, you know, pliable from a, you know, character standpoint. You can go either direction with them and tell that story so that fans are on their side ultimately.
Or you could do the thing where they have an amicable split and they're pals, not like best pals like they are now.
This is pro wrestling. There's
I know, but remember, like New Day said, we don't want to break up. We're never going to break up and feud with each other. And I think that's cool because like not every friend group eventually turns on each other. I think that's just such a Vince cynical, like I don't have any real friends in my life, so everybody's the son of a bitch and going to turn on you. You just better turn on them first, kind of that way of thinking. Not everybody needs to split up and then hate each other and be the worst friends, and so hopefully maybe they but I think the money and the excitement, of course, is them some issue coming up between them sooner or later. I'd like it to be later.
Ken Arnold chimed in and said, I think for Bianca, it is time to turn heel. I've said before in previous post shows that the babyface EST has run its course. They've done a lot. 3 straight women's title matches at WrestleMania. And he adds heel EST would be a blast. I think Bianca worries too much about the kids aspect of her being a role model. Cody said that too. You know, John Cena, I think that was a concern. You know, you want to do the charity work, you want to be there for the kids, and you don't want to break kayfabe and be heel on TV and a good guy, and a babyface otherwise. But BGF likes your idea, Travis. I like Travis' suggestion of them just splitting as friends, maybe down the line colliding, and that could happen. Yeah. Back to Greg and Waterloo, final part of his email. My predictions for next week are Santos Escobar with LA Knight taking a pin because of Logan. Tiffany Stratton beats Jade Cargill and Candice LeRae with a finish similar to tonight, with a pin getting stolen from Jade. And Indy Hartwell over Naomi and Blair Davenport, with the other two canceling each other out. I think that's all reasonable. I'm thinking Tiffany wins Money in the Bank ultimately. Because you have the Nia Jax thing with her is, they haven't played up the Queen thing, which is kind of nice, but
why is it nice?
Because I didn't want Nia Jax to be a cartoon caricature. You know what? I'd have been
like her with the scepter and a cape and everything.
But you know what? You're right, because
you spend all that money on those damn crowns, and she doesn't even the day after she win, or the show after she wins it. She's not even. At least Gunther came out with the thing. I didn't expect him to put it on. And he never put it on. He's like, you're not going to have photos of me with this stupid thing on my head. But he carried it around. He acknowledged he was king.
Yeah, I stand corrected to a degree. I actually don't. I wouldn't be. When I say it's nice, she's not. I mean, it's nice that it's not a cartoon, like it does. Because I think Nia Jax has been really good in her just kind of, snotty, sassy, intimidating heel persona. And I don't want that to be wrecked by some cartoonization of her. But I wouldn't have minded if she just, reveled in it either. I mean, I think she could have made that work. But I like, the idea of Tiffany with that maybe causing some tension or not with Nia Jax. I don't know. I mean, it just seems like that's a good, at this stage for her, it makes sense. I mean, Indy Hartwell, if she wins, she's not going to win Money in the Bank. There's been no hints that WWE sees her that they want to invest in her in that way. Naomi would be a rerun. Blair Davenport feels premature. Jade Cargill they could do, but then she has to be in a that match. I don't think they want her in that match. And Candice LeRae is low, is not strong. So yeah, I mean, I think of the people next week, Tiffany is most likely to ultimately win. What do you think of Tiffany Stratton, Travis?
I like her. I think she's the little bit I did see of her in NXT. It was her athleticism. Like, hold up, who's this? I saw this woman do this flip over the top rope. Who was that? I'm like in the group chat asking, oh, that's Tiffany Stratton. But I like her Tiffy time thing. Like, she knows her character. Like, she is good at what she does. And that's just so awesome to see. Like, although Kiana James in her actual match did perfectly fine, but like her, when she's standing there kind of with her bag, or she's saying her canned catchphrase about being the 1%, it's just like, I don't know if this woman has it. But with Tiffany's trend, it's just the opposite. It's like the moment you see her, the moment she opens her mouth, like, oh, she whatever it is, she's got it, and I want to see more of her. So yeah, Tiffany's got it. I like her, and it doesn't hurt that she's super fine. But, yeah.
They should film her at the beach. That at Prior Lake in Minnesota, because there's a really nice beach on Prior Lake and multi-million-dollar homes, and it could help her character if they, showed her coming from this, like, really, kind of up
the area. Is she from Minnesota?
Yeah, Prior Lake, Minnesota.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
And they bill her from there. So I was just there last weekend at Prior Lake Beach, and it's people who want to be seen in their swimsuits, and I mean it's a real mix of people, but you could film it in a way because there's really nice houses on the lake, and then there's a public beach and public park there too. I mean, it's not like Miami Beach, but it's enough to kind of help her character, seem like she came from privilege and play into that.
Well, I know they stopped when HBK officially took over NXT. He had her stop referencing Daddy. Like, her whole thing was she comes from Daddy's money. She's using Daddy's influence. And Michaels' thing was, we're never going to show Daddy. So you need to stop talking about him, about this person who's there's never going to be a payoff. You're never going to. So, and that was the change. Like, she still had the gimmick of being kind of a rich, spoiled brat, but the specific Daddy's money, Daddy's girl stuff stopped for that reason. It's like, yeah, we're not going to bring we're not going to bring what's his name, Wilson.
Al
Wilson
on. Yeah.
No, Al Wilson. Yeah, we're not going to bring him out or get somebody to play your dad. So yeah, quit it. But no,
that's right. Yeah,
Stratton, A+ talent. Certainly somebody to build around, and could be a big star going forward. Will be, probably. I think that's almost a given.
Last chance. Anyone in the chat room wants to throw a topic our way? Otherwise, we will start our sign off here. Do want to note with VIP membership, you also gain PDF access and all text access to the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, this week's newsletter. Punk Cost McIntyre match at Clash at the Castle. With my pay-per-view report, there's our roundtable reviews inside of that issue with scores. So the staff, including me, wrote reviews of the pay-per-view. That is newsletter exclusive. Greg Park's column this week is a review of Dave Penzer's book. Dave Penzer shares WCW memories in his new autobiography. One of the perks that comes with VIP membership and our top tier at Patreon. Again, I encourage people who are discovering us to go VIP, pwtorch.com/go VIP. I hosted a radio show in the early 90s on KFAN with some big name guests. Eric Bischoff would call up. It was Paul Heyman, Jim Cornette, Mick Foley, the late Eddie Gilbert. We had some fun interviews. Hawk on Quaaludes was on once. Road Warrior Hawk. I mean, it's just great roundtable discussions on current events in wrestling, similar to what we do here on YouTube, but it was on the 50,000 watt all sports station, the second all sports station in the country, KFAN. Those are all available on demand when you go VIP on our podcast feed. So in our podcast section. So lots of cool perks come with VIP membership. Would love for you to give us a try and join it. There's you'll never catch up unless you're young and catch up full time. There's so much to do, but there's great stuff, great rabbit holes. And we've been covering things since the late 1980s, and it's all there. Travis, what?
If you think some of the, I'm talking to the audience here. If you think some of the callers into your contemporary wrestling shows are like dorky and dweeby, and these days,
What are you saying about Minnesotans?
I'm talking about just the fact, the callers of 1991, the wrestling fan of 1991, and what they would call up and
I love it.
The questions they would ask with all the seriousness.
Earnest.
It was with all the earnestness and everything. It was great listening to those old shows.
Yeah. And John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight out of New York. We've got a ton of those shows up available from hundreds of radio shows from the 90s in the pre-podcast era. And then our podcast, on our VIP feed, we run our 18 years ago podcast almost every day. On average, probably 20 some per month we put up. So we've got our paper reviews right now. The flashback VIP vault episodes from 18 years ago are looking at ECW One Night Stand 2, the debut of ECW and Sci-Fi. So you can listen to what we're saying about that at the time, our review of the pay-per-view, our thoughts on the ECW special, all the behind-the-scenes politics, who was on headset, what did Vince McMahon think of the show as it happened, the Wade Keller hotlines back then, just tons of insider information, backstage stuff. So, there's so many. You don't have to take advantage of everything with a VIP membership, but there's a lot of cool stuff for wrestling fans, especially if you're new to the Torch brand of coverage. We didn't just start doing covering it 3, 4, 5 years ago. This has been a long adventure, and almost all of it. I wish my 900 numbers reports from the Monday Night War era, I wish I'd saved those. That's one of my big regrets. I wish I just spent money on microcassettes to save all of those recordings, because all the inside information during that time period. It's in the newsletter, so you can read the back issues, but to hear me talk about it on the daily 900 number updates would have been fun. But those are lost to history unless somebody else recorded them and sends them to me, which I've given up hope on.
They would have had to spend a lot of money in real time to have.
Well, it's not the same thing, but like there were a lot of wrestling shows in the 70s that the tapes of the live weekly TV shows that promoters thought no one is ever going to care about or want to see again, they just tape over them. Yeah. They don't want to buy new tapes. They just tape over them, and they're lost because of that. It's just the earliest VCR people, recorded those shows and have some of them. But man, what a bummer. What a bummer. Let's see. Ken Arnold says, it's always strange hearing how young we all sound in our 20s. I know I sound different at 39 than when I was 19. Brock says, Wade, you're a legend. Thank you, Brock. And Travis says, thanks, Wade and Travis. By the way, thanks to Bid Moon and Brock Banningfield for the top super chats on this show. I very much appreciate that. Your support is much appreciated. Travis, we'll let you go. We'll wrap up there. Thank you. Unless you got anything else you want to add.
No, this was a decent SmackDown, and I'm glad to be caught up and put me back in the rotation, Coach.
Good. Yeah, and I'm glad your internet held up after some. I think that TV in the background might have been it. I'm glad I thought of that.
Bobby,
I know you're pumped out.
Pulling shenanigans.
Yeah. All right, cool. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you Monday Night Live after Raw. And in the meantime, go download the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast, Blue Logo Show, and listen to our flagship, and check out that Sean Waltman interview this weekend. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.